The worst episode of Ouran Host Club, The Sun, the Sea, and the Sexism. Let me preface this by saying that I have adored Ouran High School Host Club for many years. It was among my very first anime, and I've watched it time and time again as a comfort show, something to put on when I'm feeling down. And I also know it's only natural for a 26-episode show to have a few dud episodes. I was never too into the Lobelia girls for some predatory lesbian trope-related reasons, and I also don't really enjoy the little kid-focused episodes, but I also just don't really like annoying anime kids. In my most recent rewatch, I also noticed that the show uses a transphobic slur in more than one episode, so that's a thing, at least in the English dub. However, rewatching it for the umpteenth time this year, I was struck by how much many of the show's views expressed through the character of Tamaki in particular bothered me a little bit. I understand that some of his more problematic views are presented to be humorous.
You girls have it all wrong! Don't you see there's nothing to be gained in a romantic relationship between two women? If that were the case, then why did God create Adam and Eve?
And he's frequently mocked for the things that he says, but in spite of this, he does usually get his way. I was particularly bothered by him forcing Haruhi to cover up her swimsuit in the pool episode because he didn't want any of the other boys to see her in such a costume. That's just creepy, I'm sorry, even when he is called out for it. I know she doesn't seem to care much, but it bothers me how possessive he is over her. I acknowledge it isn't usually presented as though he's in the right. He's frequently called a creep or a pervert for this behavior. Although I find it nags on my mind more than it did when I was 12, I can forgive some of this because it's presented this way. However, there is one episode of Ouran that I absolutely despise, and that is the beach episode, The Sun, the Sea, and the Host Club. It's common knowledge that every anime has to have a beach episode, and with the way Ouran satirizes anime tropes, this of course would be no exception. And the first 2/3 of this episode are general Ouran fare. The boys try to discover Haruhi's deepest fears, Haruhi is unaffected, there's some funny shenanigans in the sun. Anyone watching Ouran at this point usually knows there's some kind of actual drama that will take place in the last third-ish of the episode, usually with the club helping someone through some emotional problems or discovering something slightly deeper about one of the characters. And that is exactly where this episode goes wrong. It does absolutely everything horribly from about the 2/3 mark, in a way that is not only contradictory to multiple characters, but is extremely sexist and frustrating. I say this with love for the show, but this is honestly an episode I wish did not exist. It teaches such a terrible lesson, and I hate it. God, I hate it. I hate it so much, it made me make this essay after years of complaining about it with friends. So, if you haven't watched the show, I don't know exactly why you're watching this, but I'm going to give you a quick rundown of the situation in case you've forgotten. I wish I could forget. The sitch is that Haruhi finds two of the female guests being harassed by two guys on top of a rock outcropping on the private beach the host club is occupying. Haruhi, being a decent human being, attempts to intervene and tell the guys to back off, and the guys push her off the outcropping and into the water. Tamaki leaps in after her and pulls her to shore. When I first watched this, I was expecting, well, honestly I don't really remember because I was like 11, but this is what I imagine I was expecting. The club applauds her bravery for standing up to the guys, but tells her that she shouldn't have to face stuff alone and should seek help from her friends, even though they know she can typically handle problems on her own, because we have been shown time and time again that Haruhi is more capable than half of these idiots at pretty much anything. What I was not expecting was for the club to berate her for daring to stand up to two boys when she is just a female weakling, and what was she thinking to try to do something like that when she's just a girl? Ugh. You can imagine which one happened, and I was getting pretty mad. Luckily, Haruhi does too. She responds by getting quite angry with Tamaki for taking this stance. I was happy. The show is responding to this idiotic sexist attitude the way it should be responded to. But, as the episode continued, I realized I wasn't meant to be siding with Haruhi in this situation. It is Tamaki the audience is meant to see as the voice of reason, telling the viewers that Haruhi is behaving childishly. Seriously? We're meant to see Tamaki as the voice of reason, the adult, while Haruhi is behaving childishly? What? That is totally contradictory to the characters we've been shown thus far. Haruhi is always the voice of sanity, the representation of the audience laughing at the antics of these ridiculous rich people. Tamaki is almost always the idiot, the one we laugh most at. And at his worst, he's a bit of a sexist, ignorant jerk, honestly. So of course I'm siding with Haruhi. It's the attitude that the show has presented thus far, and also the attitude of any non-horrifically sexist human being. Haruhi actually apologizes to the club after an uncomfortable dinner because she now understands why they were all so angry with her. The viewers are meant to expect this apology, to see Haruhi as in the wrong for not understanding why she couldn't stand up for some girls because she herself was a woman. After making me thoroughly angry with Tamaki and the rest of the club for agreeing with him, we proceed with a few other scenes. And now I have to talk about the Kyoya scene. When I was 11, Kyoya was my favorite character. He's shown time and time again to have a soft heart internally. In episodes like And So Kyoya Met Him, where we see Kyoya's growing fondness for Tamaki's antics and his need for joy in his life, and the mall episode, where Haruhi unravels the kind heart beneath his cruel, cold exterior. But none of this is evident in this episode, which shouldn't be there because now it taints my enjoyment of his character forever. What the fuck is with this scene where this interesting, generally good character turns into a grade A creepo and makes his friend think he's gonna rape her in order to teach her some kind of lesson? Not only is this a way darker tone that is out of place in this show, I'm sorry, I do not appreciate any part of this scene. Haruhi's sweet speech afterwards about how she understands what Kyoya was trying to teach her and, wow, you're such a good guy, and I'm just sitting here like, what the fuck? In no way is that an okay thing to do to somebody, no matter what the grand point of it all is. On top of that, it's more lesson teaching from these men in her life who feel they have some kind of responsibility to make it clear to Haruhi that she's so weak because of her feminine nature that she needs these strong men to protect her. So let's pretend play sexual assault because that's really the way to teach your friend the wrong lesson in the first place. What a good guy Kyoya is. If I was watching this show now, I might have quit after this episode, I'm serious. I hate it that much, and it always puts a sour taste in my mouth. After that scene is over, and is wisely never brought up again, we come to the climax of the episode. The plotline of trying to figure out what Haruhi's afraid of comes back in the worst way. After being told again and again that this character who we've seen be nothing but strong is weak because she's a woman, we see her with an extreme, somewhat childish fear of thunder that turns her into a quivering mess who has to hide in Tamaki's arms. The gender roles are confirmed. Tamaki is the strong force, while Haruhi is the weak woman who is there to be protected. If this fear was presented in another episode or another way, I might not have a problem with it, but it's always brought up whenever Haruhi has to be made into the damsel in distress. There literally aren't words to describe how much I hate this. Well, I mean, I guess there are, and I'm reading them off of a script that I wrote, but you understand. At least I hope you do if you've gotten this far. If this episode's conflict had been written by me, and had to contain the bare bones of what it already is, then this is what I would do with it. Haruhi would defend the girls, and the boys in the club could still be angry with her for not getting help. There is actually a vague effort in this episode, and in some better written later ones, to make this conflict about Haruhi's lack of understanding that she can ask her friends for help if she needs it, that she can depend and rely on other people. This is a much deeper and more interesting conflict than the terrible sexist thing that is this episode. If Tamaki absolutely has to react the way that he does, have him be presented as in the wrong instead of Haruhi, and have the rest of the club have her back instead of his. If you want to have a solo scene with Kyoya, have him go talk to Tamaki and get Tamaki to admit why he was so freaked out about it, and have it have nothing to do with her being a woman so I don't have to hate Tamaki. Get rid of that scene with Kyoya and Haruhi entirely. There is nothing that anyone could do to fix that scene. Instead, you could have a good moment of friendship between Tamaki and Kyoya. Tamaki could admit that the reason he's being such a shit is because he was really afraid that Haruhi was hurt. And then he apologizes to her, and I live a happy life and love Ouran without worry until the end of my days. Maybe at the end Haruhi says she's sorry for scaring them, but still that she's not going to stand by while someone's being harassed, and have them agree with her. There's a throwaway line about her learning self-defense within the episode. Maybe go with that. I don't know. Literally anything would pretty much be better than what's there. Thanks for listening to my rant about this bad episode of Ouran High School Host Club, I guess. I thought I'd be satisfied to get my feelings out there, but I've just ended more sad that this episode even exists in the first place. I'm sorry to the world that I made you remember this episode. I'm sorry it exists. Just go watch a good episode of Ouran, like the one where the twins fight. That's a good one. Just go watch any episode that's not this one. I'm sorry. We're all sorry.